Welcome to Legal Beagle.
Welcome to the Legal Beagle with Kristina Lyke and Zofia Morales. Today we're diving into what you really need to know about your kids' photos on social media. Attorney Kristina Lyke is here to share beneficial advice around your kids' social media presence. And if you've ever wondered about the ins and outs of that, this episode is for you. Welcome back, Kristina. I'm so happy to have you here with me.
Well, thank you for having us. We are really excited to be here today.
Excellent. So, as a family law attorney, what, if anything, do you advise your clients around posting pictures of minor children on social media, whether it's them or their kids and their friends?
So, first of all, I chose this topic today because there's a lot of pictures being taken of children. As a family law attorney, I advise a lot of clients about these circumstances with children with photographs. But also, as a criminal defense attorney, I also see the problems that we have with those because there's also delivering and manufacturing of pornography. So, people want to make sure that they are being careful with their children and making sure that they're not getting in the wrong hands. And for instance, human traffickers, molesters, these people are really trying to go after kids nowadays, and we need to make sure our children are well protected. So the advice I would give is this, is that you see these cute pictures like on the first day of school or the last day of school. And, here's our kids, she's starting kindergarten. Here's Johnny starting kindergarten. And they have the address of the house that's right directly behind the individual.
Oh, something mom and dad didn't even think about when they posed the
Correct.
kid on the front doorstep.
Correct. And what that does is it actually indicates to these people that want to actually harm your children, they want to go to the house. They know exactly where they're at. They also know where the children, how old the children are, what they're wearing, things of that nature. But also another thing that we need to make sure that we advise individuals is pictures. We take pictures at the school, in front of the school that they attend. Now, a lot of moms and dads today, they go to work, they have employment. What they're doing is leaving their kids there, taking the picture on their first day, or, hey, have a great day, and then they leave them there. Well, these individuals can come and pick up the children, and there are schools that are very protective of the children. But what if they're out on recess or something of that nature? So you want to make sure that your children are very much protected as to these photographs, because nowadays you cannot be too careful on that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And thinking about it, I mean, there's not much you can do once you've put your street address out there accidentally
No.
to like reel that back in, and even if you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to post it on the first day of school, I'll wait a couple of days and he'll be wearing something else or whatever. I think that still leaves you exposed regardless.
Exactly. And you don't want to post any pictures. I mean, if you're going to post pictures of children on Facebook, there's suggestions that I do tell my clients to make sure that you have privacy on your Facebook. Make sure you know who your friends are, so that they're not public out there. So you're not sharing to the public and everybody's being able to share that to everyone else.
Right.
That is
I know I created like a family list so that if I share something, it's like just to the family list.
Right. That's actually a safe way of doing that. But then again, you also have issues when you have family members too that might be upset with you, or friends that you lose their friendship and you might not defriend them, and that can cause some issues too. But obviously, kids are wonderful, and you want to make sure that you get the pictures. But try to be careful on where you're posting. Look at the visuals. See if we're looking at addresses or where the school that they're attending. Those make a difference, and we need to make sure that our kids are well protected out in this community, and especially the world today.
Exactly. Well, and you mentioned the possibility of predators getting a hold of this sort of thing, which brings me back to like some of the stuff my mom did when we were really small, the first bath and, oh, aren't you so cute, walking around in mommy's high heels right before the bath. And of course, naked as a jaybird, right?
Right.
and that creates all kinds of problems in today's environment. So what do you recommend around those kinds of moments and photography?
Great question. I mean, I don't have any of those pictures. My mom never did those pictures. I mean, the first
Oh,
bath.
and aren't you blessed?
Yes, I am actually, and I'm thankful because, people have to actually realize too that whatever pictures that they take, their kids are going to see them later on, and they're going to be a little embarrassed too that you have maybe a naked picture of a photograph of them taking a bath. But really nowadays, you really have to be careful too because you could be prosecuted for delivering and manufacturing pornography if you have a naked picture of a child. Um,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it
Well, and
could
mom
be.
always used it as like extortion material. It was compromat.
I understand. Well, actually, though, with the bathing issue, certain people are putting those on Facebook, and you have to. I mean, don't put. I would suggest don't place those on Facebook
Yeah,
because that is great material for child pornography. It's great material for people that are human traffickers, people who want to harm your children, and we don't need to give them more insight on how to do things. Right now, we see a lot of issues. I mean, it used to be. I used to do a radio show years ago, and I was talking about the playground and making sure that you know where your children are and making sure that you have eyes on them at all times. Because I went to a playground a couple weeks ago and I saw these kids. Mom was watching them, but it was either mom or a babysitter, but they were looking at their phone. Somebody could have snatched that kid right away and they could have not found that child for a long time. So it's very important that we make sure in today's day and age, and it doesn't matter if you live in a really safe community. I mean, I live in a community that's very, we love our community. We're braggers about our community too. And we have a lot of great people that live in the county that I reside in. But that doesn't mean that bad things cannot happen. And we had one of those huge cases when I was a kid, and I'll never forget that. And a child was taken, and he was just riding his bicycle, and he was taken. And I remember that specifically because my mom was very, very cautious on me. When the lights turned on, the street lights, you had to go home right away because
yeah,
you cannot stay after the lights are out, right? So we want to make sure that our kids are well protected and make sure that when you're taking them out to the playground or even when you're getting on electronic devices, for instance, a lot of social media, I wouldn't say social media, but like games, and kids
yeah,
like to play these games. They have their headphones on. Find out who they're talking to online. Find
yeah,
out who they, because they can pretend that they're 16 or they can pretend that they're 14 or 12 years old. And these kids, and you see it, and what's sad is that parents don't realize that their kid is actually talking to an adult. And
yeah.
and
Who's
this adult,
potentially a predator?
right.
Yeah,
And this adult gets to know everything about this child because the child conveys everything. So my advice is try to spend time with your children as much as possible. Try to, put the electronics away as much as possible. But obviously, I mean, they're going to want to play those games, but actually, you want to make sure that you monitor those and make sure that too on the internet too as well, that if you have teenagers, monitor that as well. Put safeguards on there, and there's apps on the phones that you can place on there. Make sure your children are safe, and that's the biggest takeaway from this.
what kind of photographic issues do you find cropping up around teenagers? We mentioned the first bath for the youngsters, but
Well, teenagers, they're right around 13, 14, um, especially females. They might have like a bikini on, and mom and dad, they're on vacation. They'll place that on Facebook, right?
yeah,
And those, it's more or less you're looking at the human traffickers because they look at that and they're like, oh wow, you know, she's really pretty. Maybe I'll grab her up, and they try to find out more research about the individual, and then they tap into some of the social media that the child is in, like the teenagers, because they're on Instagram a lot of times, they're on Facebook, and really they shouldn't be on all these because they don't really have the cognitive ability to know what's right and what's wrong and be able to know that that person actually wants to do harm to that individual, to to the girl or the boy,
Yeah.
but they just don't have that cognitive ability, and they need to realize, the parents need to make sure that they're cognizant about making sure that these teenagers don't place those pictures on Facebook. We had I'll never forget, there's a case that a girl had a boyfriend and posted a nude picture of herself, sent it over to her boyfriend. Well, they break up. I mean, things happen
Yeah.
like that, oh, I'm really in love with the individual this week, and next week you're not. But what happens is after they break up, this boy went and sent the picture over to another individual, and so that's called delivering and manufacturing pornography. So then they get
Mm.
charged. So
Yeah.
then you have teenagers getting charged for these adult matters, and really, be as a parent, and I'm not a parent myself, but as all the parents out there, we need to make sure that you talk to your children and say, don't take these naked pictures of yourself.
Yeah.
Don't go and place these on Facebook. Don't text them to your boyfriend, because sometimes bad things can happen, and then you don't want to ruin any future that you have either.
Exactly. Well, and my first boyfriend, this was way like post internet, pre internet rather, and he pressured me for that, and I said no. And he's like, "Don't you trust me?" I'm like, "I trust you right now, but I don't know what's going to happen in the future,
Right. Good for
and
you.
I don't want that out there."
No, and
Yeah.
a lot of girls get pressured on that. Even males get pressured on that, um, and they just can't. And it's a lot of pressure. A lot of kids have pressure right now.
Yeah.
There's getting pressure of what to do later on after high school. Getting pressure from the school, pressure from the social media. But what we want to make sure is that kids are only kids once in their life, and we need to make sure that they're well protected, they're well versed in what can happen. I mean, obviously, we don't want to scare them so that they can't go outside and think
Yeah.
that there are good people. But we want to make sure that, moms and dads have these talks with these kids, because you see that too often. And it's sad because, on the criminal side of it, you see some of these boys getting charged, right? Because it was stupid. It was ignorant of these kids to do that. Because why? They didn't have the cognitive ability to know what was right and what was wrong.
Exactly. Well, and there's this idea that, oh well, uh, revenge porn. That's an option, right? No, that's an extremely life limiting option.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So, do you see a lot of these situations in your practice?
I do see a lot of these situations in practice, because not only am I a family law attorney, I'm a criminal defense attorney, but I also forewarn individuals. Even though we might be talking about a custody matter, and one person will say to me, I really don't like that, my husband's posting, or my ex-husband's posting all these pictures of the kids online. I said, okay, so what would you like to do about that? Because here's what I think about it. Here's my opinion, because I wouldn't like that in those circumstances. I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I don't want anything to happen to them. So what we need to make sure is that if we place something in an order that says that neither person has permission to place these pictures on Facebook unless both parties mutually agree upon the same, right?
Right.
So that way they're both getting consent on that, and you still can take the pictures and you can still have them and show them maybe to a friend, but don't post them on social media or text them to the individuals. And so
Yeah.
you see also cases too with young boys, that are getting charged in juvenile court, or some even get adult court because of the fact of the delivering and manufacturing of pornography. And that's really sad, because that could have been nipped in the bud if we would just teach our kids, like, hey, don't send naked pictures to another
Yeah.
person.
And
And
don't ask for naked person
right.
pictures from another person.
And even and have, and that goes to some of the self-esteem too, with kids too, because they need to know that their parents, do love them, obviously, but they need to know that they have to make sure that they have respect for themselves too. Because if they don't have respect for themselves, a lot of times they will go and send those pictures, to their boyfriend, because they're looking for, that love or
The
support
acceptance, yeah,
or
approval.
acceptance.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to make sure that they're just cognizant of that behavioral aspect of that.
thinking about the camera situation, we're living in a world where cameras are now proliferating. You've got them on the front door with your Ring cameras. Some people have them literally inside their house, nanny cams, this kind of thing. What do you suggest around those sorts of cameras?
Well, cameras are great for outside. What we have seen, well, I almost said strike that because I was on the record, right? But cameras outside, those are fine, but cameras inside the house, people can hack into those, and they actually can go and take the privacy. They can watch moms, dads undress. They can take and look at your children getting undressed. So that just gives another motive for human traffickers and also people who want to do harm to your family or your children. So it's very wise not to have cameras inside the house because that's the easiest prey to
Yeah.
go for computer hackers and also
Yeah, the Internet of Things is really security weak.
correct.
It's very low-hanging fruit as far as hackers are concerned.
Correct. And the outside cameras, I say that's great, but don't, inside, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, and you don't want to get freaky after dark in the backyard. You have outside
No,
cameras.
I would hope that not, right?
Let's not do that. So, what, if any, new Supreme Court cases can you let us know about today around this issue of children and photographs and cameras?
Well, if I can back up just a minute,
Sure.
there was something I wanted to disclose earlier. Just recently, you asked me about practice, if I seen it in practice.
Yeah.
I was scrolling down. The reason why I came up with this topic is because it's so important for me to make sure that our kids are well protected. And being a family law attorney, kids need to be, we look at the best interest of the children, and we need to make sure that they are safe, but also they can be kids while they're kids, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things I saw on Facebook, I saw this, an individual that I knew personally. I don't know her that well, but I know of her. She was posting her child on Facebook, and he was buck naked from the back side, not the front side, but
But
put
still,
oops,
yeah.
put oops on the screen. Now, if you saw that, don't post that. Especially because the fact is that's going to go out to the public, and not only that, they're going to think maybe you are starting to become a groomer, or maybe have some maybe perhaps some issues or something of that nature. But there, you could have CPS issues. You could have issues with, I guess, child pornography, molesters, human traffickers. So please do not, if anybody can take anything away from this today, make sure that you don't post naked pictures, because that's not good. And plus, your children don't want to have those, the backside of them in a picture later on in life. I just cannot
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah,
having
it'll
that.
end up on some late night talk show or who knows.
Correct. Especially if you're an elected official, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're limiting your child's future career potential here.
And going back to your question, though, as the constitutional, there was a Supreme Court case that just came out yesterday. It was regarding a Tennessee case, and I thought this was very fascinating because it dealt with the Equal Protection Clause, which is the 14th Amendment. And what it did was Tennessee had a law that banned any puberty blockers and also any surgery for children that wanted to be a transgender
The
themselves.
transition, yeah.
Transition, not transgender, excuse me, transition themselves. And it stopped the puberty blockers too as well. So no surgeries on this. And this went to the Supreme Court. And what was fascinating is the Supreme Court said, this law is constitutional. And a lot of people on the other side of the fence on this is given a lot of flack on this. And they're indicating that that's not equal protection. But the law is both boys and girls actually cannot have this surgery done, right? So there's no discrimination there. Plus, what the Supreme Court looked at was they looked at the age, because age is rational review, not strict
Right.
scrutiny. And we also looked at the health. So the majority came out and said, this is constitutional, and the law can do this. I also looked at it the Tennessee can do this, but I also looked at this way too, that the state can actually give greater rights than the federal to their private citizens, as long as they're not infringing upon the rights, right? Or greater protection, excuse me. I want to say
Yeah.
greater protection to their citizens. And when you look at this, there's a thing called HIDA, a law called HIDA, which is Home's Youthful Training Act. And what that is it's called a deferred sentencing. And so if a child went and committed a crime, you could get on probation or an order and follow that order. And as long as you didn't get any violations and you're dismissed, that will never be on your record. Now, when I first started practicing, which was about 19 years ago, we had it under 21 years of age that a child could receive this HIDA. Now it's up to under 26. And why do I bring this up? The reason why I bring this up is they do not have the cognitive ability to know what is right and what is wrong. So when we go and take that perception, we want to look at okay, so when we look at the Supreme Court case, it is giving greater rights to children because at those ages, I know that some of them may want to go and transform themselves into either a girl or a boy. But the problem is that they're going to wonder, why did you make me do this, Dad? Why did you have me do this, Mom? Because at that age, they don't know what they really want to do. They don't have that cognitive ability. And so I think people need to be cognizant of that and let these kids grow up. I mean, obviously you need to reassure them and some of them need to have therapy on this situation too, but it's not an easy situation. But I want to make sure that the individuals know that what the Supreme Court ruled was not against equal protection, and there is equal protection right there with what Tennessee did. So I thought that was a very fascinating case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people look at what's being protected differently, if that makes sense.
Yes, because a couple of years ago, we had a case that it was about discrimination in the workforce. Well, that's different. Was it with a transgender? That was different. And everybody's saying we're backsliding because of the fact of this case that happened a couple of years ago that the Supreme Court said that was violating their equal protection. But that was happening in the workforce, and they were discriminating against a transgender. And you cannot do that because that is against the equal protection. That is completely different than what this case is. This case is about age and health, and also the law in of itself does not discriminate against anyone because it's the same law for each, the girl and the boy.
Yeah, and looking at it from that perspective, it kind of fits into the same bucket with you can't drink until a certain age, you can't drive until a certain age. So yeah, I can see the logic behind that.
Yes.
So what are your final words of wisdom to wrap this up today?
My final words of wisdom is that make sure that you keep your children safe, and always, make sure that, you know who your children are going with. If you have cameras inside the house, I would take those out of your house, and make sure that you're always being responsible for where your children are, what your children are watching, what your children are like on social apps. Keep an eye on them because they're only young once, and we don't want them either being taken by somebody that you'll never see them again. And you love those children, so we need to make sure that we protect them and make sure that they're safe. And so that's what I want people to take away from today's episode.
Very good. Thank you for sharing this wisdom with us here today, Kristina.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
So if you want to understand your rights, Kristina Lyke is the voice you want in your corner. Visit likelaw.com to schedule a consultation and learn more about how she defends families, freedom, faith, and your future. You don't have to fight alone. Stand up, speak out, and protect what matters with Kristina Lyke.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.